Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said it so casually, like it was nothing. Maybe if you bought me something nice, I'd feel closer to you. We were sitting at an Olive Garden, her phone face up beside the plate, screen lighting up every few minutes with messages she didn't bother to hide. I looked at her for a second, then said, "I bought you time, and you wasted it." She blinked, half smiled, like she thought I was being dramatic. But that was the first moment I went quiet. And when I go quiet, things end. Claire had this way of talking about life like it was a showroom. Every conversation came down to image, money, what someone drove, what someone wore. She'd sip her iced tea and say things like, "They just bought a place in the Heights, 3 bedrooms, full glass kitchen." It wasn't envy. It was calculation. That's what scared me. I was an architect. I built things that were meant to last. She sold things that were meant to be replaced. I'd come home from the site covered in dust, smelling like drywall and steel, and she'd look at me like I didn't belong in her version of success. I thought she was just tired. Turns out, she was already elsewhere. The signs were small at first. Late-night client calls. Perfume that didn't belong to our mornings. One day she came home with a new bracelet, said it was from a builder appreciation event. I didn't ask. I just looked at her and smiled. She took it as trust. It was actually distance. That weekend, we stopped for breakfast at Chick-fil-A on the way to one of her open houses. She was talking about a new client, some investor from out of state, rich, smooth, buying properties in cash. The way she said his name told me everything. I didn't interrupt. I just watched her reflection in the window, bright and excited, like she'd already moved into another life. That night, she scrolled her iPhone, half watching something on HBO Max, laughing at a show I couldn't hear. I was next to her, but I might as well have been across the ocean. I opened my laptop, looked at the blueprint on the screen, and realized I was building something she'd never understand. I didn't argue, didn't ask who he was. I just stopped filling the silence. And that silence started to grow, filling the room, the house, her eyes. She wanted luxury. I gave her silence. And she didn't even notice it was the most expensive thing I had left. The first real crack came from someone else's mouth. Her coworker, Jenna, mentioned it in passing over coffee when I stopped by her office one afternoon. "Claire's been spending a lot of time with that new investor," she said, smiling like it was gossip, not a warning. I nodded, pretending it didn't mean anything. But something in the way she said a lot stayed with me the whole drive home. That night, Claire came in late. She smelled like the inside of a luxury car, leather, perfume, and a trace of someone else's cologne. I was at the kitchen counter, sketching on my notepad, pretending to work. She said they'd had a client dinner, just business, then opened a small Zales box to show me a necklace she claimed was a promotional gift. My pencil stopped midline. I looked at the chain, gold catching the kitchen light, and said nothing. She mistook that silence for approval. It wasn't. It was calculation. I started noticing how often her iPhone stayed face down now, how she'd check messages in the bathroom with the door slightly closed. When I asked if she wanted coffee in the mornings, she'd say she didn't have time. But she always had time to answer him. At work, I was designing a new residential project, something sustainable, something honest. My boss told me it was one of the strongest concepts I'd done in years. I didn't tell him why. Pain sharpens precision. Every line I drew was cleaner, colder. Every structure stronger. I was building the version of myself she'd never get to know. A week later, we were driving to a property together. She kept talking about how impressive the investor was. Smart, confident, knows what he wants. She didn't realize she was describing everything she'd stopped seeing in me. At a red light, I watched her smile at a message on her phone. The glow from the screen hit her face, and for a second, she didn't look like my wife. She looked like a stranger rehearsing happiness. I didn't confront her. That's what she expected. Instead, I filed the moment away, like an architect marking where a wall will later come down. Silence isn't weakness. It's the first stage of demolition. Proof always shows up when you stop searching for it. One night, Claire fell asleep on the couch with her MacBook open beside her. The screen was glowing faintly, an email thread still open. At first, I told myself not to look. But then I saw the subject line. The Lakeview property, dinner recap. It wasn't the words that caught me. It was the timestamp. Midnight. Saturday. A weekend she told me she was showing a home out of town. I scrolled once. There it was. His name. Compliments. Plans. The kind of words people only write when they think no one will ever read them. I closed the laptop quietly. I didn't slam it, didn't wake her. I just looked at her hand still resting near the keyboard, her nails perfectly done, her breathing calm, and I realized she wasn't mine anymore. Not in any way that mattered. She had traded truth for attention, and I wasn't going to compete for it. The next morning, she moved through the kitchen like nothing had happened. She poured her coffee, tapped on her iPhone, laughed at something on her screen. I asked how the showing went. She said, "It was great. He's a serious buyer." That was the last conversation we had that felt normal. After that, everything between us was choreography, movements without meaning. At work, I stayed late every night. My coworkers thought it was dedication. It was escape. I'd eat dinner alone in the car, the same Chick-fil-A sandwich I used to share with her, but now it tasted like memory. I'd watch the parking lot lights flicker against the windshield and think about how love dies, not in arguments, but in convenience. That week, I started pulling my things from the house. A few blueprints here, some books there. She didn't even notice the gaps. The silence grew thicker, heavier. She filled it with noise. Music, shows on HBO Max, fake laughter on the phone. But silence has a way of echoing louder than sound. By Friday, I had everything I needed. Except closure. But closure isn't something you ask for. It's something you build, quietly, while no one's looking. And I was already drafting the foundation. The night I left wasn't dramatic. There was no argument, no shouting, no slammed doors. Just silence. The kind that hums in your bones. Claire was on the phone, laughing softly in the living room, her voice low, flirtatious. I stood in the hallway, watching the reflection of her smile in the mirror. That was the last image I wanted to remember her by. Not the lies, not the excuses, just that smile that no longer belonged to me. I placed my keys on the marble table by the door. Next to them, I left a short note written on plain paper. "You can have everything, except me." That was it. No name, no date. I didn't need her to understand it right away. The best messages take time to sink in. I took my Jeep Grand Cherokee and drove through the quiet streets of the city, headlights sliding across houses I'd once dreamed of designing for us. Somewhere between the freeway and the silence, the weight started to lift. She had traded meaning for moments, and I wasn't going to live on borrowed time anymore. By morning, my phone was buzzing with her calls. I turned it off, deleted my accounts, erased everything that still tied me to the version of me she could reach. When I stopped at a Costco outside town, I bought a cheap notebook, some food for the road, and a thermos of black coffee. It felt almost symbolic, replacing everything luxurious with something real, something that worked without pretending. Over the next few days, I disappeared. No messages, no explanations. I knew she'd panic, not because she missed me, but because she lost control. People like her don't mourn love. They mourn the reflection of themselves they can't manipulate anymore. Somewhere near the coast, I found a small motel. I spent nights sketching again, building structures that didn't need to please anyone. The silence didn't scare me. It shaped me. I realized the truth wasn't that she betrayed me. The truth was simpler. She revealed herself. And that was the kind of closure I could live with. I didn't plan revenge. That would have meant I still cared. What I wanted was distance and clarity. But clarity comes with information, and information has its own quiet power. I still had access to some of her work files. Old shared folders, client lists, notes. One night in that motel, while the sound of waves pressed against the window, I opened them. The investor's name appeared more than once. His company listed as a buyer on multiple properties, each one slightly inflated in value. It wasn't just about her affair. It was about money. A pattern too polished to be accidental. I spent hours tracing numbers, dates, signatures. The architect in me saw the cracks instantly. Fraud always leaves fingerprints, just not the kind you can see. When I was sure, I packaged everything neatly and sent it to the local commission anonymously. No message, no name, just data. Within a week, the news hit her office like a storm. Her client, her so-called investor, was under investigation. She didn't know where it came from. She never would. From what I heard later, he cut her off immediately. Their business relationship dissolved overnight. She tried to reach out to me then. Emails, calls from different numbers, even messages through friends. I never answered. Silence was doing the work for me. Meanwhile, I started something new. A small firm, under a different name. The first project was a sustainable coastal house. Simple, strong, honest. People said it had soul. I didn't correct them. It wasn't soul. It was survival turned into structure. Every morning, I drive the car down the empty shoreline, drink my black coffee, and think about how quiet peace actually is. No drama, no performance, just clean air and design that made sense. She had her noise. I had this. Weeks later, a friend sent me a photo. Claire at a listing, standing too still, smiling too wide. The shine in her eyes was gone. She had her luxury, her brands, her perfect image. But something was missing. The audience. Because I was gone, and silence doesn't applaud. News spreads fast when it smells like scandal. Within days, everyone at her office knew about the investigation. The investor's empire started to crumble, and with it, her image. She tried to control the story, said she'd been just doing her job, that she had no idea. But people notice when confidence turns into panic. Even Jenna, her closest coworker, stopped defending her. That's how isolation begins, not with betrayal, but with avoidance. I didn't gloat. I didn't even follow it closely. But one evening, a colleague sent me a link to a local business article. There she was, Claire, standing outside a property she once bragged about selling. The caption said the deal was under review. She looked smaller somehow, even though she was dressed perfectly, tailored blazer, bright lipstick, that same Zales necklace glinting in the sun. I stared at the photo for a long moment, then closed it. The silence between us had finally reached the public. Meanwhile, my firm was growing. Small projects at first, but word traveled. People liked working with someone who didn't talk too much, who listened, who built exactly what they needed. One afternoon, I walked into a cafe and overheard two agents discussing me. They didn't know I was there. "He's the guy who left his wife and built that new modern retreat downtown," one said. "He doesn't even advertise. Just disappears after the work's done." I smiled. That's the thing about silence. Once people start talking about it, you've already won. That night, I drove past our old neighborhood. Her car was still in the driveway, lights on inside. Through the window, I saw her pacing, phone in hand, probably waiting for a reply that wasn't coming. She had surrounded herself with noise, music, streaming shows, the constant ping of her iPhone, but none of it filled the space I used to occupy. I parked for a minute, just watching. She wanted luxury. She got loneliness wrapped in glass and gold. Then I started the car, turned off my headlights, and drove away. Some ruins don't need rebuilding. They need to be left exactly as they are, as proof of what silence can do. Time has a way of rearranging what hurts. After a few months, the anger had burned out, replaced by something quieter, a calm that felt earned. My mornings were simple again. Coffee before sunrise, a short drive to the office, blueprints spread across my desk. I stopped checking my phone entirely. There was nothing left to wait for. One afternoon, while picking up supplies at Costco, I saw her. She was standing by the home decor aisle, dressed immaculately as always, holding a candle she probably didn't need. For a second, she didn't notice me. Her expression was tired, like she hadn't slept in weeks. Then her eyes caught mine. The silence between us was instant, heavy, electric. She smiled, weakly, as if to say hello, but the words never formed. I just nodded once, calm and polite, and turned away. That was all it took. I could feel her breaking without a sound. Later that night, I got an email from an unknown address. It was her, of course. A few lines, apologizing for everything, saying she missed the simplicity of us, that she didn't know how to fix what she'd ruined. I didn't reply. Some things lose meaning the moment you name them. She started appearing everywhere, places she knew I might go. Coffee shops, art galleries, even one of my new project sites. Always from a distance, pretending it was coincidence. She wasn't chasing reconciliation. She was chasing relevance. The world had moved on, and she couldn't stand being left behind. Meanwhile, I'd begun mentoring younger architects. Watching them work reminded me of what I used to love about creating. One of them asked once, "How do you stay focused?" I told him the truth. By remembering what happens when you build something for someone who only wants to sell it. He didn't understand it yet. One day he would. That night, driving home along the coast, the air was cool, the road empty. I rolled the window down and let the wind drown out the past. She had her glass houses, her showings, her carefully curated life. But no matter how many rooms she filled, she'd always hear it, the echo of my silence. It was late fall when she finally found the courage to approach me. I was at an architecture exhibit downtown, standing near one of my new models, a minimalist structure, all glass and concrete, built on silence and restraint. The plaque had my company's new name on it. I could feel someone watching me before I saw her. When I turned, there she was, Claire, dressed in black, hair tied back, holding her phone like a shield. She said my name quietly, almost like she was afraid of breaking something fragile. I didn't answer at first. I just let her stand there, surrounded by everything she had once dismissed as too simple. She looked around at the crowd admiring my work and said, "You really disappeared." I met her eyes and replied, "No. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected." Her lips trembled, but no words came out. That was enough. She started to cry then, softly, the kind of crying people do when they finally understand too late. A few guests looked over, unsure whether to step in or stay back. I stayed silent. It wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. She had spent years measuring love and gifts, and now she was face to face with the one thing she couldn't buy back. After a moment, she whispered, "I never meant to hurt you." I nodded once, calm, detached. "You didn't hurt me," I said quietly. "You just showed me who you are." She stepped closer, but I didn't move. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even cold. I was done. The next morning, I saw her name trending locally, photos from the event, her standing beside me, headlines twisting it into speculation. She probably thought it meant something, that the world still cared. But they weren't talking about her. They were talking about me, the man who walked away and built something beautiful from silence. That night, she texted me one last time. "Can we start over?" I didn't open it. I deleted it the way you erase a line from a blueprint once you know the structure no longer needs it. Some designs aren't meant to be rebuilt. Winter came early that year, and with it, a kind of quiet that felt earned. My days were full, my firm steady, my mind clear. But hers were unraveling. I didn't need to ask to know it. It showed in the way people stopped mentioning her name. Silence follows the ones who used to crave attention the loudest. A mutual acquaintance ran into her at a cafe and told me later, she looked lost. I nodded, pretending not to care, but part of me already knew. I could picture it. Her sitting there, latte in hand, scrolling through her iPhone for a message that would never come. Her world had always depended on being seen, being admired, being chosen. Now she was invisible, and she didn't know how to live like that. That night, I saw her by chance again. Downtown. She was showing a high-end condo to a couple, rehearsing her charm like a script she no longer believed in. When she noticed me walking past on the opposite side of the street, she froze for just a second. Our eyes met. She smiled automatically, the way she used to when she wanted something. But I didn't stop. I just kept walking. That was the moment she broke, not visibly, not publicly, but deep inside, where no one could see. Later, I heard she'd left her firm. Something about reputation damage, about starting over. But starting over isn't a luxury, it's a consequence. She had traded permanence for perception, and now perception had turned its back. I went home that evening, poured a drink, and stood on the balcony overlooking the city. Every light below was a story, some honest, some pretending. For the first time in years, I didn't wonder which one was hers. She used to believe money and admiration could fill any silence. Now she finally understood, silence isn't empty. It's full of everything you lost when you stopped listening. Somewhere, in another apartment, maybe she was thinking the same thing. But by then, it didn't matter. I had already built my life on stronger ground. The kind of foundation she never noticed, until it was gone. Spring returned quietly, as if nothing had happened. The city looked cleaner, brighter, almost new. I had moved into a small house by the coast, the one I designed during those sleepless nights in the motel. It wasn't big, but it was mine, built on honesty and silence. I spent mornings sketching at the kitchen table, the sound of waves replacing the noise that used to fill my life. Peace doesn't announce itself. It just arrives when you stop chasing what doesn't matter. One morning, a letter arrived. Handwritten, no return address. I didn't need to open it to know who it was from. Her handwriting had always leaned too hard, as if she was trying to prove something even in ink. I left it on the counter for hours before finally unfolding it. The words were simple, no excuses, no anger, just confession. She wrote that she understood now what I meant when I said I'd bought her time and she wasted it. She wrote that luxury wasn't gold or glass. It was someone who stayed when no one else would. And she ended with a line that stayed with me longer than I wanted. You built something real, and I sold it for attention. I folded the letter back neatly and placed it in the drawer beneath my blueprints. Not as a keepsake, but as evidence. Proof that silence had done what anger never could. It had taught her the cost of losing someone who meant everything and said nothing. That evening, I took a drive along the coast in the same car I'd left her in. The road was open, the horizon endless. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to look back. She had her lesson. I had my life. As the sun dropped into the ocean, I parked by the edge, turned off the engine, and just sat there. The quiet felt heavier, but not lonely. She wanted luxury. I gave her silence. And in the end, silence was the only thing that couldn't be sold, copied, or replaced. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. And that's how you win without ever saying a word. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.